Joy in Tigertown, a determined team, a resilient city, and our magical run to the 1969 World Series.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Martin Van Dyke. I'm the morning drive host at Ann Arbor's 107.1. And yeah, well, I'm the music guy, the main music guy at our radio station. Believe you me, I'm a big sports guy and a big baseball guy. And to be in the presence of this man and this other man sitting to my far right is a truly special evening. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to Tim Grimes and all of our friends at the Ann Arbor District Library for hosting this event. We're here to talk about this incredible book, Joy in Tigertown, a determined team, a resilient city, and our magical run to the 1968 World Series. To my far right is the venerable sports writer, Tom Gage. Tom, thank you, first of all, for being here. Worked for the Detroit News for decades, from the late 70s to just a couple years ago to 2015. It was in 2015 that he was awarded the prestigious J.G. Taylor Spink Award. And sitting between us is a living legend, and I planned this night so it would be timed around the exact 50th anniversary of the Tigers' colossal win in the 1968 World Series. And the year still unfolds in my mind like a dream, that something so incredible, this can't be reality, that this is so incredible and so unbelievable what happened 50 years ago. Is this real? It sure is. This is the man who pitched 3 victories in 1968, Mr. Mickey Lolich, our guest tonight. Oh my. Thank you both so much for being then? Here. Yes, I was 13 years old, and I was in junior high school listening to Game 7 in class. They let us do that. And Mickey, what do you remember the night before? This was the eve of you pitching this third game. Did you sleep at all the night before Game 7?
Slept like a baby.
Really?
My wife was up all night. And the amazing thing about it was that back when we'd won the pennant, Dick Purton, WXYZ
Sure.
at the time,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
they had asked me if I would comment on yesterday's game, you know.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And he was supposed to call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, he called me at 7 o'clock in the morning, Detroit time. But it was 6 in the morning
St.
in
Louis
St. Louis.
time. Mm-hmm. Central
And all
time,
the people in the studio said, "You're not going to get him up, are you? You're not going to wake him up. He's got to pitch Game 7. He says, he won't care. You know. So I was sound asleep. The phone rang. I picked it up and I said, "Hello, Dick." And he says, "Well, I guess you're okay for me calling you. You didn't call me a dirty name."
Great.
So.
Just incredible. And you pitched Game 7 on how many days rest, Mickey?
Two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it, it's amazing.
Yeah. I don't. And when you look at the way pitchers pitch these days, this is something that literally could not possibly happen in 2018.
Well, Mickey, when were you told you were the starter?
Yeah. When did you know?
Well, the story behind that is I was sitting in the dugout for the 6th game, and I was at that end of the dugout, and Mayo Smith, our manager, was at this end, and he signaled to me to come here. Right? I didn't think he wanted me to pinch hit, but so I walked down, and he went down the steps into the tunnel, and he said, "I want to ask you something." He says, "Can you pitch tomorrow?" And yeah, if you need me in relief, I says, I can pitch, you know,
Sure.
or, you know, get a left-hander out or something like that, a hitter. And he says, "No, I want you to start." And I said, "Oh, okay," you know. And he says, "Well, you sort of answered that very quickly." He says, "What makes you think that you can start?" And I says, "Well, it's actually my middle day. I pitch every 4 days. I mean, the day after I pitch, I don't do anything. But on the middle day, I said, I I go down to the bullpen, and I says, I throw close to 100 pitches just working out in the bullpen. And he says, well, I want to tell you, I want you to pitch only 5 innings. 5 innings and you're out of there. And I says, well, let's see, I throw average of 15 pitches an inning times 5. Well, that's 75 pitches. Yeah, that's easy. And he says, you sure? And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, I want you out of the ballpark because we're going to announce that you're going to be the starting pitcher tomorrow, and I don't want you besieged by reporters and things like that. So I went back to the hotel with my wife, and we had a doctor at the time. It's hard to remember some of their names 50 years ago. Yeah. But he was, anyway, we took a cab back to the hotel, and he had a machine with him that does electrical work on you. It stimulates your body and things like that. And we went up to his room, and he started putting these pads on me and everything, and my wife was, you know, sort of sitting over in the corner, and I'm sitting there going,
twitching away.
And she's like, what are you doing to him? He says, well, I'm sending impulses through his arm. He says, which will get the stiffness out of his shoulder. So we did that for about 15 minutes, and when it was over, she says, I'm glad that's over. I said, what about me? You know? And then he says, go downstairs and have dinner, but then come back up again. We're going to do it all over again. Oh, okay. So anyway, I go out and I get through the first 5 innings of the game, and the score is 0-0, and I walk off the mound with the thought in my mind that, well, I did exactly what he wanted me to do, and I'm done, you know? And he's waiting for me. He says, can you go one more? I said, yeah, I can go one more. I said, I have no problem with it whatsoever, you know? So I go out and pitch the 6th inning. And when I come back in, you know, he says, can you go one more?
This is like Count Basie, one more time, one more time. Mm-hmm.
So now we're batting in the 7th inning. And we scored 3 runs in the 7th inning. And I walked up behind him and I tapped him on the shoulder and I says, now I'll finish it for you.
Wow, wow.
And he said to me, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Now in St. Louis, they had a wooden fence out there where the bullpens were. And you could not see if anybody was warming up. You couldn't tell it. When I went into the 9th inning, we had scored another run and the score was 4-0. Not a single guy was throwing in the bullpen. I found out this later. They were peeking through the cracks in the fence, you know. Whoa. And I did give up a run in the 9th inning after 2 outs. Mike Shannon came up. He was a dead fastball hitter, and I stood right out there and I says, Mike, you're getting nothing but fastballs. And that's what he got, and he hit one out. I said, yeah, give me another ball, let's go. You know, but we had one player on our team. His name was John Warden. He was a relief pitcher, and he was the only guy that did not play in that World Series. And every time I see him, or if I'm talking to a group like this, I would have said, John, if I would have known that, I would have told you to come in and pitch the 9th inning. And he went, no, 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 no.
You know, when Shannon did hit that home run, and we were watching the games together on YouTube last winter, and Shannon, even though he hit the home run, Mickey, as you know, he knew that game was over. Yep. Because as he was going down the dugout steps, he was taking off his shirt. Yep. He knew that was probably going to be it, and that the World Series for the Cardinals was over.
Because their dugout was on the first base side for a home team, and I was just looking over at the guy who's coming up next, who happened to be Tim McCarver, but I picked up Shannon, and he was going down the steps and going up the tunnel, and he was taking his shirt off. You know, like,
this is done.
So I knew I had him then.
Whose idea was this to put this book together? Was it yours originally, Mickey? Tom, did you come up with
Well,
the
I
idea
think it was
to write
both
the
of
book?
ours.
Yeah?
I wanted to write one. I thought Mickey had been underwritten about as a Tiger hero
You're
and
not kidding.
certainly as a fine pitcher. And Mickey wanted a book written about his life, his career, and and the World Series, but he didn't want it to be just about the World Series. He wanted his grandkids to know that what he had done in his career. So the way we arranged it is that we alternate a game with a chapter that something about him as a boy, and also just a personal chapter. And we've gotten a lot of comments from people saying that it's not a baseball book, it's a biography, and it's both. And it was really a joy to do, because I found out so much about Mickey that I didn't know you're a left-handed pitcher, but you're a right-handed person. And I didn't know that you grew up learning how to throw a baseball by throwing figs in your grandfather's backyard. And there were so many things. Once we got into it, and Mickey started telling me the stories that he wanted to tell, and he didn't really get through them all. I think we have enough for 2 books.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
It's just fascinating to do.
Well, one of the reasons I really wanted to write the book was because I had 3 daughters, no boys. And girls aren't really into baseball, in a way. Don't get wound up over there. And when I finished my career in San Diego, and my daughter's mom would say, go down and say hi to Dad. And so they'd go down around the ballpark, and they'd come down to the bullpen. Hi, Dad. Oh, hi, girls. Phew, they were gone. They were interested in 2 things in San Diego. They had the San Diego chicken.
Right.
If you know about him,
yeah.
puts on a great show during the game for people, and they wanted to eat nachos. And so I come to realize that they really didn't know a lot about baseball. So I figured, I got my daughters, and then I got grandkids coming along, and they won't know anything about me. So I decided I was going to tell my story of how I started out, what caused me to be left-handed, but I'm right-handed. I'm right-handed. The only thing I do left-handed is with a power stroke. I throw a ball left-handed. I play tennis left-handed, but I cheat there. Because if you hit it over here, I'll hit it this way back at you. And if you hit it over there, I'll switch hands and hit it back that way. And just little things like that, that I thought that my family should know about. And when we first contacted Triumph Books, who put it out, they wanted me strictly to write about the World Series. And I said, no. Well, what do you mean no? I says, well, I've never written a book, and I sort of want to be able to tell my story to my girls and my grandkids of how I moved along to become a guy pitching in a World Series. And that's how we put it together. So I've had a lot of people say they start the book on Monday and they've read it all the way through by Tuesday night. They can't put it down. And I think that's a great compliment. He did a great job with all the stats, and I told a lot of lies.
Speaking of stats, and I've read this list to a lot of audiences, I want you to be absolutely aware of what type of, we all knew Mickey was a fine pitcher, a very good pitcher, maybe even a great pitcher, but these stats prove to me that he was a great pitcher, worthy of Hall of Fame consideration. We're talking about the pitcher who has the most wins as a Tiger since 1925, 207. His 376 innings that he threw in 1971, second highest in the majors since 1917, and only 1/3 of an inning behind the highest. Most strikeouts in the majors from 1965 to 1974, 2,245. Jack Morris was the pitcher, we hear he was the pitcher of the 80s. Well, Mickey was the pitcher of a decade also. It was just not on the zeros. It was from 65 to 74, because he had the most wins in the American League from 1965 to 74, 172. Most complete games in the American League from 65 to 74, 155. And the only left-hander with 3 complete World Series games in the same series. Now, this is the case for the Hall of Fame. Only 9 pitchers in history, 9, can make the following 5 claims: that they were top 20 among all Major League strikeout leaders, more than 190 complete games, more than 40 shutouts, more than 495 games pitched, and that they won more than 215 games because he also won some games for the Mets and Padres. The only pitcher, Mickey is the only pitcher to accomplish all 5 of those previously mentioned stats in only 16 seasons. The only one of the 5 who was an MVP, and the only one who was of the 9 who was an MVP in the World Series, and the only one to pitch 3 complete games in the World Series. And speaking of the 9 that I compare him to, or the other 8, he's the only one of the 9 not in the Hall of Fame. The other 8 are Nolan Ryan, Steve Carlton, Bert Blyleven, Tom Seaver, Gaylord Perry, Phil Niekro, Ferguson Jenkins, and Walter Johnson. So that's the company that he keeps. And one more, the 1,538 batters he faced in 1971, because Mickey's very proud, and rightly so, of what he did other than the World Series. If you go back to the 71 season, I mean, it was a career year for just about anybody. It would have been a career year, but that was 3 years after 1968. But the 1,538 batters he faced in 1971, the most by any pitcher in the majors since 1923, and as we all know, they don't face that many anymore.
Oh, wow,
so
incredible.
That's Mickey Lolich, the pitcher.
Goodness.
I should have asked for more money.
Yeah, really. Let's go back 1 year to 1967. Tigers were a pretty damn good team in 1967, but there was something else going on which was tearing the city of Detroit apart. As a kid, I didn't fully understand everything that was going on in terms of the riots in 67, but I knew from the worried look on my parents' face that there was something terrible going on in the Motor City. But I knew we had a baseball team that was just about the best in the world. Go back a year, Mickey, and what was that year like for you? And not quite becoming world champs, how much did that give you inspiration to get the title in '68?
Well, the thing that we ran into at the end of the season, we were supposed to play 4 games against the California Angels. And
on the road?
We got rained out on Thursday, and we got rained out on Friday. So we had to play a doubleheader Saturday and a doubleheader Sunday. Oof. And we had to win 3 out of 4 to win the pennant. But if we'd have won 2 out of 4, we would have had a playoff. There was 3 teams fighting for the pennant that year down to the last days of the season. And it didn't happen. You know, we only won 1. And the heartbreaker was to us, to just make things worse, was that Dick McAuliffe had never hit into a double play for the whole year. And he finished the season for us and himself by hitting into a double play. That it was over. In an instant, it was over. And we were just like, how many kids we got in here?
Cover your ears.
Got to watch what I say.
Okay.
You know, but it had just come to a sudden, abrupt end. But when we went to spring training the next year, we played a lot of American League clubs in spring training that were down in Florida there. And the guys would be the home team would be hitting first in batting practice, and then the visiting team was going to, they were out not on the field, but they were in the dugout, and they'd come up and start milling around the batting cages while our guys were hitting. And all of them said, you guys had a great team last year. You guys are going to win it this year. And we were hearing it from Baltimore, Boston, all the teams that were, in the American League, and we were geared. I mean, we're going to win this thing this year. We're going to go get them, and we did. And but hearing it from your opponents was really a good lifter. Yeah.
And the city certainly needed it because of the riots in '67, and it needed a lift, and the team certainly provided it.
I got to tell you about the riots. I was in the National Guard, so I got called in, and I was in active duty for 10 days. Wow. Well, after they were over, I got a letter from the Black Panthers that I was going to be assassinated the first night game that I pitched.
Wow.
So the day came where I was going to be pitching my first night game. And the guys had noticed that there was people in the dugout wearing things in their ear, and they had bulges in their coats and things like that. And if you looked up along the roof of the ballpark, there was guys up there with rifles. Well, just before the game was getting ready to start, after we left the field, after infield, Jim Campbell came in and he said, you guys may have been noticing that there's some strange people around the ballpark wearing dark sunglasses and earbuds and things like that. He says, that's the FBI. He says, they're here to protect Mickey because he had got a death threat for tonight's game. And they went, so anyway, I go out and I'm the starter that night. And I throw some warm-up pitches and everything, and I'm ready to go. And Norm Cash comes over to me at first base, and from first base, and he says, by the way, he says, this is the last time you're going to see me over here tonight. He says, 2 targets are bigger than 1 target, and so I'm going to stay away from the mound no matter what. Now, I can be honest with you, I can't remember who I pitched against that night, what team it was. It was just too long ago. Yeah. But during the game, I had a lead. I mean, I was doing good. I mean, I had like a 4-run lead, 5-run lead, and at one point I stopped, and I turned towards Norm, and come here. I want to talk to you. He's over there.
No, not going to happen.
Come on, I got to ask you something.
Yeah, right. It's important.
I'm not coming over there. So I was still the single target out there on the mound, but it never happened. So as you can tell, I'm here.
Yes, thank God. Yes, thank goodness.
Let me tell you one more story because Mickey loves to talk. Norm Cash was a particular favorite of yours. Oh. And the Tigers had a trainer back in those days called Jack Hommel. And he was a long-time trainer. And one time in the dugout, correct me if I'm wrong, he was saying, I've never been on television. And he said, I just never, I'm a trainer.
Game of the week.
Game of the week.
Yeah, game of the week. Yep.
So during the game, there's a pop-up near first base, and Norm goes over to the barrier and camps under it, and all of a sudden he trips or something, fakes a trip, and falls down, and everybody thinks he's hurt. So Jack Hommel goes running out there to see what's wrong with him. And,
on TV.
Yeah, on TV.
National TV.
And when he gets to Norm, Norm says, what, Mickey? He says...
Well, he jumps up and says, see, now you're on national television. Jack is remembering it.
I love it.
Oh, boy.
Were there other players on the team you were particularly close to besides Norm Cash, Mickey?
It's funny I say this, but it would have been Mickey Stanley. Pitchers do not get real close to hitters because they're supposed to score runs for me, and if they don't, most pitchers just stay in a little shell of their own. They live in their own little world out there. And as teammates, it's the same way. Every once in a while, I'd room with one of them, and okay, when we roomed together, we'd go to breakfast and go to lunch and stuff like that, but never got super close to anybody. You know, he just.
But you do say that one of them saved your life,
Oh yeah, that was
Wayne Comer.
Wayne Comer. Remember him? Most people don't.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, there's a ritual in baseball that if you're pitching tomorrow, you're out behind second base. There's a netting out there, and there's a bag full of balls. And as the balls are hit to the outfielders and things like that, even the guys playing shortstop or second base, if they catch it, you flip the ball over behind that screen. And the starting pitcher of the next day is behind that screen. And he's putting balls into a bag. And then when the batting practice pitcher calls for balls, everything stops. You go up and you empty all these balls into a basket, and then you go back behind the screen. Well, I was out there and I was talking to Wayne Comer. He was standing off the side of the screen, and I wasn't paying any attention. There was a ball laying there on the ground over there, and I walked over to pick it up, and I leaned over. And at that time, Willie Horton was taking batting practice. Oh. And he hit what we used to call frozen ropes. Oh, yeah. That means it leaves here and it's still there when it gets to center field. I leaned over to pick up the ball, and Wayne was standing there, and it was right here, in my head.
Oh, man.
And he was right-handed, and he took his glove and caught the line drive.
Oh, my God.
And the impact of the ball carried his glove back, and he hit me in the side of the head and literally knocked me over on the ground.
Oh, my God.
And every time I see Wayne, every time, there's the man that saved my life.
Wow.
I'd have been dead, you know.
Ooh. Wow. Oh, my goodness.
It gets dangerous out there sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, they got all the extra netting now, I notice, at Comerica Park to protect the fans.
No,
Well, one of my favorite stories in the book isn't a baseball story. And you know, I think you know what it is. When Mickey won the most valuable player award for the World Series, Look magazine, which was it was like Life, and Look magazine was big.
Sure.
And they sent him on a national tour for Dodge, right?
Yep.
For Dodge cars. And one of the places that you started in California, went to I think you went to Las Vegas or went to the Grand Canyon, and it went across the country. Well, one of the stops was in Daytona, Florida, and they went to the Speedway. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mickey, but you don't mind driving fast. You don't mind going fast. And Bill France and Bill France Jr., the founders of NASCAR, put him into a car, and they drove around drove around the track, and with the family in the back. It was a special car. And so the first lap, or the first go at it, went fine, and then they went back into the pits, and the family got out, and Bill France turns to Mickey and says, "Hey, you stay in, and you can take it from here, because I might say something that's incorrect." But Mickey eventually, let me tell you, Mickey eventually earned his driver's license for Daytona. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Well, first off, we got to go back a little bit. I was driving a Dodge Charger, but it was a full-blown race car. But they did have the seats in the back. But I mean, it had the big motor in it and everything. It was full-blown. And so when the family got out of the car, Bill France, he was sitting in the passenger seat. He said, "Hey, I want you to see something that's quite unique." And I said, "Okay." So we pull out of the pits and we go up around the first turn, the second turn. And he says, "Now, this one had a speedometer in it." I said, "It looked like a regular car, but it sure wasn't." He says, "I want you to get in the center lane, because there's 3 lanes out on the track. First off, if you're a non-NASCAR driver, the speed limit is 100 miles an hour. You cannot go over that. If anybody wanted to go out for a ride in a car, 100 miles an hour." And he says to me, "I want you to get in the center lane at 125 miles an hour." He already told me 100 miles an hour is the limit. You own the goddamn place. And he says, "When you go into the turn, I want you to take your hands off the steering wheel." Huh? Well, he owns the place, And what it is, I go into that turn, and centrifugal force and the speed of the car at 125 it just stayed right there, going around the turn.
Really?
Yeah, it just pinned me to the ground, and the car steered itself because of the banking. And I did it in the next turn, and as I was coming out of turn 4, he says, take it in the pits. I went, oh, okay, that was fun, you know, it was neat. He goes in there and he says something to the pit crew, and all of a sudden there's all the tires are coming off the car. No tires are coming back on. He says, okay, let's go. And where? Let's get out on the track. I said, okay. And he says, take it up as fast as you want to go.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, I was flooring it going down the straightaways, but I chickened out a little bit in the corners. You know? So we run the 4 laps around the track, you know, and we come back into the pits, and all of a sudden here comes his son running towards the car. And he is fuming, and he is swearing, and all sorts of stuff. And he says, Dad, what are you doing? If you'd killed the most valuable player, you would have crashed the car, and the Tigers would have sued us. And I mean, he's going on and on and on. And the dad says, well, nothing happened, did it? And he says, no. He says, well, everything's okay. He says, well, the other thing they can't find out about is that he ran all 4 laps at an average speed of 155 miles an hour.
Holy moly.
And he qualified for his rookie license to run at Daytona.
Hey, man, secondary career if the baseball thing didn't work out. Huh? Wow.
Some things you might not know about Mickey is that he also was a Las Vegas singer. He was he headed the lead act for Vic Damone.
Right.
And
yeah.
he was at the Frontier for a while. He also subbed at the Rooster Tail in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
And one other thing is that his career, major league career, almost never happened because he went home to Portland, Oregon when he was in Denver one year because the Tigers wanted to send him to Knoxville, and he didn't want to go to Knoxville. So he said, I've always wanted to be a mailman. I'm going home to Portland. And he went home to Portland. The more you get to know Mickey, the more you know how determined he is. And even as a young man, he left Denver, and again, I'll let him fill in the gaps in the story. But he went home and took the test to become a mailman, and the Tigers had to go bring him back to the franchise, to the team, because he was determined. He didn't want to go to Knoxville and pitch for a manager who he didn't get along with. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it did. That's exactly what happened. And the one part that why they were going to send me to Knoxville, the first batter that I faced in 1962 was a guy from Louisville. I mean, we were playing the Louisville baseball team. And
Bobby Boyd, right?
Bobby Boyd.
Mm-hmm.
And I had pitched against him in spring training because they had a farm team, you know, the minor leaguers. And he was called the rope because that's all he hit. Those frozen ropes I was talking about, good hitter. And I had been pitching him inside in spring training. And I got him out all the time. Well, he was the leadoff batter of the 1962 season. And I figured, well, he's looking inside. So I'm going to throw him a fastball on the outside corner. Well, he hit the ball, and it hit the grass out in front of me. And it came up, and it hit me in the face right here.
Oh.
And it went off my face down into the right field corner for a stand-up triple.
Oh, stand-up triple? Oh, my God.
Well, I remained conscious. They took me to the hospital, and I think I dozed off for a minute, and I thought I was dead because when I woke up, the most beautiful blonde angel was standing over the top of me in her white nurse's uniform. Yeah, she's not an angel. She's a nurse.
She's a nurse. You're alive.
So there was another player in the big leagues that at one time got hit in the face with a line drive, and his name was Herb Score, the left-hander. And he never got over getting hit in the face. and his career came to a very short period. Well, the Tigers didn't want that to happen to me, so they kept sending me out there on the 4th day. A starter, pitched every 4 days, and my eye was completely closed.
God.
Now, I'm a left-handed pitcher. I take the ball and I throw it, and I look with my left eye to see where the ball's going, and especially if they hit it, you know, I can make a move, but I couldn't see. I was blind. Well, they started me 3 times with my eye closed.
Whoa.
And they decided they were going to send me to Knoxville to a lower class, you know, because I couldn't pitch for a AAA team. And I'd had a run-in with the manager in Knoxville the year before. He did something to me in front of the whole team that I thought was totally unprofessional, but that's another story. That's in book 2.
The sequel.
So they gave me a ticket for Knoxville. I went out to the airport, and I says, "Can I exchange this for Portland, Oregon?" And they said, "Well, yeah, fine." And then a lot farther flight to Knoxville, so the airline made some money, you know, off me. So when I got home, I called Jim Campbell, who was a farm director at the time. He wasn't the general manager. And I said, "I'm just letting you know that I've retired from baseball, and just to let you know, I quit." "What do you mean you quit?" You know, "Well, I'm tired. I got hit, and I don't want any part of it. I don't want to pitch another baseball as long as I live." Well, after about 4 or 5 days of being home, the manager for a local team in the neighborhood I lived in came over to the house, and he says, "Mick," he says, "we're playing the #1 team in the league we play in tomorrow night, and I'd like you to come out and watch this left-handed pitcher we got and see if you can just maybe give him some pointers." And I says, "Well, okay, you know, I can do that." And so he says, "Here's a uniform." "A uniform?" You know, he says, "I'm just going to watch him pitch, aren't I, from up in the stands?" He says, "No, I want you down on the bench for you can talk to him if there's things you see that he can do better." "Oh, okay, you know, I'll go along with that." So I go out to the ballpark in uniform, you know, and the game is sort of first, second inning, maybe the 3rd inning, you know, someplace in there. And the manager of the team, he says, "Your dad's down at the end of the grandstand, and he wants to talk to you." "Really?" I said, "Oh, okay." So I went down there, and he says, "Son, I've never asked you to do anything in all the years that you played amateur ball or anything." He says, "But I want you to do me a favor." I says, "What's that?" "I want you to go out on that mound and pitch." "What?" I didn't even bring a glove with me, you know. I'm supposed to be watching another kid pitch. And so he says, "Please, I want you to go out there." And I said, "Well," I could see now, my eye had opened up and everything. And so I went back to the bench, and the manager was waiting for me, and he says, "What'd your dad have to say?" I says, "I need a glove." He says, "Go warm up." They'd schemed against me, I tell you, both of them. So I go down the bullpen and I warm up and I go out for the next inning. Now I'm playing against amateur kids, you know, and I'd been a professional for 4 years. Well, I pitched 5 innings. In the 5 innings, do the math real fast now, I struck out 16 guys.
16.
The catcher missed one.
Oh.
So that guy got to first base. Now I got to pitch to another guy, but I got him too.
Oh.
You know? The next day, the headlines in the Portland paper was, "Lolich, amateur or professional?" And then I got a call from Jim Campbell.
Oh.
I'm trying to figure, how can he be calling me? I mean, I'm out in Portland, and it's, you know, time difference and everything, back to Detroit.
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, you ready to go to Knoxville?" I says, "Nope, I'm not going to Knoxville." He says, "Well, I hear you had a pretty good night last night." And I says, "Yeah, it did pretty good, you know." He says, "You won't go to Knoxville, huh?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, I got a deal for you, being you won't go to Knoxville." He says, the Portland team, which was a AAA team, want to buy you, purchase you from the Tigers. And I said, no. Campbell said that. And I said, yeah. He says, but I agreed to loan you out to Portland. Because you could do that. They used to do that a lot in the minor leagues. You know, if you had two guys, two good first basemen, that both should be playing in AAA, and you only can play one, they would contact another organization that maybe had a first baseman that wasn't that good and say, would you like a first baseman for the year? Well, being it was my hometown, and we were a bad ball club, the Portland team. Oh, they were brutal, you know? And they figured maybe the hometown boy pitching or something like that might draw a few extra people in the ballpark. And so I ended up pitching that year for Portland. And like I said, we had a bad team. Nothing to write home about, you know. They couldn't catch, they couldn't hit, they couldn't do nothing. So the next year I go to spring training for the Tigers, with the Tigers, the big league team. Because I was on the 40-man roster, I was a protected player. I pitched 18 scoreless innings in spring training and got sent to the minors. Jim Campbell had to prove who was boss. So I was in Syracuse, New York for about a month, pitching well. And on opening day of that year in 1963, Frank Larry had hurt his arm pitching in a snowstorm. And they sent him to Knoxville, which I pitted him going to Knoxville because they had the same manager there. And they brought me up to the big leagues. Don Wirt and I both came up the same day. And when I walked in there, I went in to talk to the manager because, you know, I showed up. And he says, I didn't want to send you down. He says, you had a great spring and you should have made the ball club, but Jim Campbell said no. And he says, the other side of the coin is Frank's going to be down there for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, he's going to come back and you're going to go back down to Syracuse. So enjoy the month in the big leagues. Enjoy the meal money, because it's a lot better than in the minor leagues. Enjoy the lot better hotels. And I went, okay, fine. And he says, you're not going to pitch. You're not going to pitch much at all, but we got to fill in the roster. Well, that night we were playing Cleveland and we were getting our butts beat, excuse me, young ones. And all of a sudden they tell me to get up in the bullpen. And I says, well, they told me I wasn't going to pitch. And he says, look, I got the phone in my hand and I want you to warm up. I said, okay. So I went in against Cleveland. We were getting beat like 10-0. And I went in and I pitched 3 innings in relief. And the first guy I faced, I struck out in the big leagues. And I got 2 or 3 more in the 30 innings I pitched. And when the 30 days were up, they sent somebody else down, and 16 years later, I retired.
Tom, I think you probably would have these figures more top of mind, but my memories of the 68 Tigers was, one of the many memories I had was we could be trailing 6th inning, 7th inning, we'd come back and win. It just was happening over and over again. And it was, I just, again, there's sort of like this dream, this stuff that you dream of, a baseball team that could be losing.
And it continued actually through some of the games of the World Series.
Yeah, let's hear more about that.
Mickey's known for the 3 games that he started and won in the World Series, but he also hit a home run. And in Game 5, I swear he saved the entire shebang for the Tigers. 7th inning, the Tigers are trailing 3-2. It's the 7th. Don Wirt had already made an out, so they're 8 outs away from being eliminated from the World Series. And Mickey's in the on-deck circle. He's looking back there. Gates Brown has already grabbed a bat. He thinks he's not going to. He thinks he's not going to hit. Actually, I think you were trailing 3-1, 3-1, 3-2. You were behind.
Yeah.
And Mayo Smith goes, nope, go on up there. So they don't send up a pinch hitter for Mickey, even though they're behind, staring at elimination. And Mickey goes up and singles to right field. Do you feel good about saying what you said to the ball as it went out to right field?
No, there's children in the audience.
Well, we can use initials. You said, "Get down, USOB, get down."
I was yelling and screaming at it, and the score was 3-2.
Yeah.
Because when I finally came around the home plate, I was the tying run.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
But anyway, he triggered a 3-run rally that saved Game 5 for the Tigers, and then he went on, of course, to.
But the reporters asked Mayo Smith, "I can't believe you didn't pinch hit for Mickey. You know, I mean, how could you do that?" He says, "Look, he gave up 3 runs in the first inning, but he's got everybody out since. Who am I going to bring in that's better than him?" So I let him hit. Figured, well, we still got a few more innings to try to tie it up and go ahead. And
Well,
yeah, that was reasoning, I guess.
Gutsy.
not to preempt any of the questions you're going to ask, but the one that I've heard Mickey be asked the most is, and it's a great story, is who was your toughest hitter to face? And it might not be anybody that you expect. It might not be anybody you remember, but it was. Who was it, Mickey?
Cesar Tovar,
Yeah.
second baseman for the Twins. No matter how I pitched him, if I pitched him in, he would pull the ball to left field. If I pitched him away, he hit a ball to right field. If I threw it right down the middle of the plate, he hit it right back at me into center field. I could not get that man out come hell or high water. Well, my last year pitching for the Tigers was 1975. And we were playing in Minnesota right near the end of the season. And he came up to bat for the first time, and I'm looking at him, and it's like, everything I've thrown at him, he gets base hits off. Okay. Cesar, fastball. He looked out at me, you know, and right down the middle of the plate. He took it. Cesar, fastball. Took it again, you know. Cesar, curveball. I'm left-handed, he's a right-handed batter. Well, if you know that a curveball is coming from a left-handed pitcher, you're going to go out there and get it. You're going to go out and get it, right? What if I was lying? I threw him a curveball for strike 3. I told him every pitch when he came up in that game. He struck out the first time, and he hit 3 of the most feeble ground balls, the shortstop, third base. He was 0 for 4. When the game was over, Freehand came out there in his Big Ten trot that he had, and he says, "You think we should tell everybody what's coming?"
Mickey Lolich, Tom Gage, thank you. We're honored.
This program was recorded on October 9th, 2018 at the Ann Arbor District Library.